The Joe Show. Woo! Woo! The Joe Show. Yeah, welcome back. Hey everybody, Joe Amaral here, and thanks so much for taking the time to check out today's podcast. Now, let me just kind of, confront the elephant in the room. It's been a long time since I've actually recorded anything. If you go back and look at the last podcast I posted, it was actually on May 12th, 2021, almost a year and a half ago. And it's hard to believe that much time has passed. It's not that I didn't have anything to say or that I don't have anything to say. I think I will say this. It just, it became kind of difficult to say anything publicly, to be honest with you. Especially during the height of the pandemic, it just seemed like, no matter what side of the aisle you were on in terms of, COVID and, all the things that go along with that, if you said that you agreed with this, people would jump on you. And if you said you agreed with that, people would jump on you. And it just became so toxic. And I said, you know what? I don't want to contribute to that. I don't want to be a part of that. And so I've actually just been quiet on the whole thing because my heart is not to introduce, chaos or disunity or anything like that. And it was hard to watch sometimes, looking at all your Facebook and Instagram feeds, but mainly I would say Facebook, just seeing, people, Christians who were posting things that were just so venomous because somebody didn't agree with their position. And I said, you know what, I don't want to get into that. And during the pandemic, of course, I talked to people about, viewpoints and what they thought about certain things, but that was always in person. And even if I disagreed with a good friend and vice versa, at the end of the meeting, hey, we're friends, everything's fine, finish your coffee, and, on your way, you went. And so, hopefully now we've reached the place where, listen, no matter where you stood on things and no matter what side, you were on and what your beliefs were, hopefully that's behind us. And we can, learn from that experience to be more respectful in the future and just really listen to people instead of, having a pre-formulated response and just waiting for the other person to breathe so that you can catch them and just, throw all the stuff that you've heard, about whatever at them. Hopefully we'll just take a little more time and actually listen. And even if you wholeheartedly disagree with something, that's okay. That's okay. You can still, be friendly. Doesn't mean you have to be BFFs. And so while all that was going on, I just hunkered down and focused on what we were doing, especially in Liberia. Today is October 6th, if you're wondering what day this was recorded on. And I've just been back about 3 weeks from my most recent trip to Liberia. And I took 4 awesome ladies with me who volunteered for 2 weeks, who came to serve. And it was amazing. And, I'm not going to kind of do a recap of the trip or anything. But jump on to my Facebook or my Instagram, and you can go back and see all the amazing things that we were able to do. And so, now I'm back and I'm just kind of looking forward. What can I do? What do I want to talk about? And that's been one of the difficulties. So one was the divisiveness that was online because of the pandemic. And I definitely didn't want to attach myself, either way to anything. I just thought, what, let's get through this. Let's move on with our lives. And hopefully, like I said, if we ever have to go through this again, we'll be better equipped and we'll have kinder responses. And so I've been sitting here scratching my head, for the last 3 weeks saying, what do I talk about? Because if I'm being honest with you, when I started the Joe Show, this podcast, right at the beginning of the pandemic, in March or April of 2020, I was personally in a totally and completely different place, in my life, in my ministry, in what I was, doing for a living. And I really didn't know what I had to offer. Like, what do I want to say? What do I have to say that's worth, value that people could listen to and get something out of it? Because nobody wants to listen to a podcast just for the sake of listening to one. Like, hopefully there's something in every episode you listen to, that's going to help you become better at what you do. If it's for emotional, support, for advice on how to be better at what you do. And so I want to contribute to that. And so I want to talk about, pivoting during the pandemic. I call this episode, perfecting the pivot, and you want to add another P, perfecting the pivot during the pandemic, because I'm an itinerant, teacher, and my job, relies on my ability to travel by car and a lot of times by airplane, and couldn't do that for 2 years and change during the pandemic. And so I had to kind of rethink what I was doing and how I was doing it. And so that was one of the difficulties that I had to work through and work with. And I know that a lot of you listening to this said, yeah, me too. I had to totally change, the way I earned, money, because, my job was in person and I had to pivot. I had to, reinvent my abilities and learn how to implement them in a different way, because you couldn't be in person and all that kind of stuff. And so when the lockdown started, when COVID really kicked in the spring of 2020, I was doing a lot of teaching in churches, on the Hebraic background or the cultural background of the scriptures. And that's what I'd become known for, and people would invite me for that. But during COVID, as I began to get more and more involved with Liberia, that's where my heart really began to shift and focus. And from the second I woke up in the morning until right before I would fall asleep, it was always like, oh God, what can I do to help Liberia, Lord? How can we be better at what we do? How can we raise more so that we can do more? And that kind of became everything that I thought of, and it still is to this very day. And even with everything that the country of Liberia is going through, as I record this, there's a massive food shortage in the nation. Actually, the whole continent of Africa is really struggling for wheat and for rice right now because of the conflict in the Ukraine. And so with each passing month and passing year, my heart became more and more for Liberia and less for what I had been doing before. And not to take away from anything that I did, because I still hear, from people. Just this past weekend, I was up in Timmins, Ontario, and I still hear from people about, how the teaching on the culture of the Bible has really helped people to understand, Jesus and his teachings better. And that's awesome. But if I'm being perfectly honest, it just hasn't been the driving force behind what I'm doing. They say that what comes out of the mouth is what's in your heart. And if you've talked to me in the last 2 years, you're probably sick of hearing Liberia, Liberia, Liberia. That's all I can talk about, because that's what's in my heart. It's so full for wanting to help that nation and the people who live there. And that's why we've been working so hard and doing, what we're doing. I was able to go to Liberia 5 different times during the pandemic, even at the very height when travel seemed impossible. When there were little breaks here and there, I would get on the plane and I would go and be with the people. And I remember walking onto platforms and the pastor would just start to cry, and the people would cry and clap because they were so thankful, that we would take the time to go and be with them, even in a really, really, crazy, chaotic time in our world. And so when I started the Joe Show back in the spring of 2020, I was just coming off of what I'd been doing in Israel for about 14 or 15 years. And then this shift came, this trajectory change in my life. After 14 years of being on the road, going one way and building up your name and really a reputation for yourself about being, a certain kind of teacher. And then God just totally, shifts everything, and you start going in a different direction. And, believe me, I'm thrilled for it. I am so happy doing what I'm doing. In fact, I've never been more content in all my life, just knowing that we're making a difference in the lives of people on a regular basis, and that we're, giving them hope for tomorrow, and, giving them permission to dream again, to look forward and not just think about today. And so it's been a real big change in my life. And I know that if you've been following me through the process, you've seen the change. You've seen the emphasis and the focus really going to what I'm doing now in Liberia. And so I had to come to terms with that. I had to say, you know what, that's okay. I wasn't sure how people would react, those who had followed me for so long with what I was doing in Israel. Would they make the jump with me? Would they switch over to what I was doing in Africa, and would they want to support it? And I'm so thankful that the answer is yes, that thousands of people remained faithful, and they remained friends and partners, and have made the shift towards what I'm doing in Liberia. But I had to come to the point where I was ready to say, it's okay if people fall away. It's okay if people stop following me, if they stop supporting me, because this isn't something that I decided on my own. I didn't just wake up one morning and say, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do this. It was a real divinely inspired thing. And as I look back and reflect on these past almost 3 years of work in Liberia, I can see the hand of God. I can see his fingerprints all over the scene, and I know that he's been leading me and guiding me. And so I had to come to terms with that and say, I'm going to lose some people, but that's okay, because I'm not doing it out of anger. I'm not doing it out of spite. I know they're not either. It's just they have a certain focus, and I have a certain focus. And that's one of the things I want to get across today, that it's okay to do what you feel led to do. Yes, we care about what people think, because, we're humans, and we value those relationships. But we can't let it get to the point where we don't do something if the reason is exclusively because, people are going to talk, or people are going to say this. And so I just want to encourage you, if you're listening to this today and you're kind of teetering on a decision, on making a career change or having to make a pivot because of what's been going on for the past couple of years, it's okay to do it. It's okay to do what makes you happy. It's not that we do things to make people unhappy, but if they become unhappy, that's not our responsibility. We have to be true to ourselves and true to the call, that we feel is being placed in our lives. And whether that's changing, from banking to, to working in a convenience store or something bigger, it doesn't matter. Whatever it is that you feel that you need to do to be happy and for your family to be happy, you need to permission yourself and say, what, it's okay to follow my dreams. It's okay to do what I feel led to do. And so I had to, reckon with that. I had to wrestle with that and say, what, it's okay. And I'm so glad that I did it. Even this morning, whenever you see the emails come in, people sending e-transfers, sending in finances to help us purchase rice during this crisis in Liberia. I think, God, if I hadn't said yes to that call, if I had let what people, or let my idea of what I thought people were going to say prevent me from doing, making the pivot, making that change, then all these people, these 10,000 people in the community that I'm serving, they would be starving, or they wouldn't have enough, food to get them through, this difficult time. And so I had to deal with the disappointment of losing people. But I'm telling you, man, when you follow through, when you do what you're supposed to do, the joy, the fulfillment on the other side of that is greater. What you gain is so much greater than what you may or may not lose. And that's the other thing. We self-sabotage, we say, well, I can't do this because, I know for sure that group of people are going to be angry with me, or I know that person for sure is going to judge me, and that church isn't going to have me in anymore, or this or that. And that may or may not be true. I don't know. But most of the time, it's not even true, but we feed ourselves those lies, and then we actually believe them. We're pretty good at lying to ourselves, and we're pretty darn good at believing our own lies. And so I just want to encourage you and let you know that there is so much joy on the other side of that decision. Saying yes to the dream, saying yes to the call, responding to it, and then acting on it, doing it. Oh man, I can't even begin to explain the joy that I feel. Every single day I get correspondence from Liberia, whether it's from somebody that we've helped in a community. One of the chiefs will send me a video of people drawing water from the well that they now have because partners joined in with Hope for Liberia. And it would not have existed if I wasn't willing to say yes. Sometimes we're so afraid of what may happen that it paralyzes us, and then nothing ever happens. And I've said this so many times. I've said it to my kids when they were thinking about a career change or a big life decision. I've always said to them, I would rather try something and fail miserably at it, look back and go, wow, I'm really awful at that. I should never do that again. I would rather do that than to sit at home wondering for the rest of my life, man, what would have happened if I would have said yes? What if I would have taken that trip? Or what if I would have said yes to that position? I wonder what would happen. For me, it's not worth it. I always believe that it's better to try and fail and know what you're not good at just as much as it is important to know what you are good at. And so this is just more of a brief podcast today. They may be longer in the future. I don't know, but I don't want to talk for the sake of talking. But I do want to encourage you. Maybe you have your earbuds in as you're going for a walk, or you're taking the bus or train to work, or you're flying somewhere, and you just you downloaded this and you're listening to it. It's okay to follow your dreams. It's okay to make a major career shift. It's okay to do it once, twice, 3 times, whatever it is, to find that thing that fits you, that thing that fits your personality, that utilizes your character, it utilizes your skill set. And I never dreamed that in my 50s that I would be serving as a missionary, as a humanitarian in Liberia, but I just could not imagine doing anything else. And because we said yes, 2022 is not over yet, so I don't know exactly where we're going to land financially, but I can tell you this, it has been amazing just to watch people, jump on board with you and buy into the vision and support you. There's something about that, that I've never experienced before. Every other ministry I've had the privilege of leading or being a part of always existed, and I just kind of stepped into the role, but birthing something that's uniquely you, nobody will love that thing more than you. And so it has been such a thrill. And in 2021, we saw the greatest increase financially that we ever could have anticipated. We were thriving during the pandemic, thriving during the pivot. And for me, it was just a real sense of, acknowledgement and confirmation. Hey, you're doing the right thing. People can see it. They're participating, they're contributing, and lives are being changed. And so I just want to encourage you to do what you love what you do, whatever that is, whether it's, blogging, YouTubing, creating a TikTok channel, starting a restaurant, starting a business, making a shift in your employment. You know what? Just pursue the passion, pursue that thing that's in you. And I think that you'll be surprised at how full you will be when you get to the other side. So folks, that's it. That's another episode of this new season of The Joe Show. And remember, do what you love and love what you do. The Joe Show.